going to go ahead and get started. I see the time is 9:32. We're going to go ahead and call the April 25th meeting of the CRA Board to order. Good morning to everyone, and thank you all for tuning in, either in person or however you're tuning in. Mr. Cox, do we have any changes to the agenda?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
No modifications.
No modifications. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move forward with public comments on agenda items. Do we have any comments on agenda items?
Yes, Madam Chair, we do. At this time, I have one speaker card, or we have one speaker card. Ms. Donna Cotterell is wanting to speak on agenda item 9.02. Ms. Cotterell, if you would come to the podium, your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes. The light on the podium, no, on the dais will go from green to amber, yellow to red. At that time, if you would, please conclude your comments. Thank you.
Good morning.
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 I'm grateful to be here. We all know it's been a lengthy process and well worth it, I believe, in the end. As you know, we had our review with the County Commission, and they recommended funding for Indaba and for the programming portion of the application, because we had only been recommended for the infrastructure piece. So with that being said, we're really excited because that gives us an opportunity to share some of this wealth with the community, because Indaba has always been community focused, and all of our programming is to enlighten and inform and entertain the community. We are asking for a portion of that, which won't cover either of the entities whole or make them whole, but in part we can do some of the renovations for the amphitheater and do a portion of the programming. And the way the budget kind of shakes out right now, it may be either or. It may be either the Funk and Blues Festival or just the programming, which one event over months of our programming that we have laid out for you looks more attractive to be able to do more programming. We would love to have the funding to do both, and we're hoping that you all will make a recommendation. But right now, it looks like the 13 months of programming is probably what will be funded with the portion that we're being given. So I'm hoping, as commissioners have said here in the CRA meeting, as well as the county, that there may be funds available elsewhere, which we would love to have access to, and are looking for your approval for the county's recommendation to fund a portion for the programming and then a portion for the infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cotterell. Is that our only speaker?
We have an additional speaker, Mr. Whitfield Leland. Name and address for the record, sir. You'll have 3 minutes.
Whitfield Leland, 754 West 7th Avenue. So I looked at the tourist funding last night, and I get when we come, the community come to CRA, city, county, and we give an ask for our programming, it's always, oh, we may be able to find some money somewhere else. And my issue with this is, if we finna spend $500,000 on repairing a building, we can give $120,000 for programming. It's all tourist dollars, so I mean, it's doing the same thing. So my thing is, we finna spruce up a building, but only gonna be able to use it for half of what we wanna do. And my second issue is, and I'm gonna bring this up to y'all again tomorrow. My second issue is the way the neighborhood first plan and the CRA funding and what you're able to do and how you're able to do it it's kind of confusing to the people like myself that's in the community every day, trying to find ways to get things done. And the first plan say one thing, but you can only spend the money in the CRA another way. I don't find that out till I get almost at the finish line, then I got to go start over. And it's a little frustrating that we as community leaders don't have really necessary access to CRA staff to explain what we want. I know they say, call me this, call me that, but hell, I could call the office sometime, and if I don't leave a message, I don't get nobody. You feel what I'm saying? So, and I'm not a message type person to leave. I don't really like leaving messages. It may be some people out there in the community the same way. And the time that we do get to sit and talk to them in these meetings confined, it's restricted language or some stuff we don't understand. So I guess what I'm trying to say is there any way that staff can direct the CRA to have a meeting on a regular basis to keep us informed of how things are moving and how we can get things done through the CRA? You know, because it's like we're trying to establish a Frenchtown Neighborhood Association. We went through the neighborhood. I went to neighborhood first, but evidently Mr. Cox got to figure out a way to how to use the money. I mean, like, that's frustrating all day long. So, and that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
That is all the speaker cards that I have for agenda items.
Okay. Thank you. We're gonna move forward with our presentations. And Mr. Cox, as I spoke to you just prior to the meeting, I received a text message this morning from Mr. Walt McDonald. And have you received any communication from him?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Let me go ahead and read into the record what he sent to me. I've tried to send it to my work email, but it hasn't arrived there yet. But I got this as I was driving in this morning. So let me just read into the record what I received from the chair of the CAC, Mr. Walter McDonald. Dear Chair Williams Cox, I regret to inform you that I will not be able to attend the meeting this morning due to my health condition. I'm suffering from an infection and currently taking 3 different antibiotics, which are making me feel weak. See below a copy of my report. I apologize for any inconvenience caused, and I hope to join you all at the next meeting. Thank you for your understanding. Best regards, Walter McDonald III. His report. Greetings, esteemed board members. On behalf of the Greater Frenchtown Southside Citizens Advisory Committee, I bid you a pleasant morning. In our most recent meeting on March 13, 2023, we welcome our newest member, Dr. Kelly Kennan, who will be representing Florida State University on the committee. The name is spelled K-I-N-A-H-A-N, so I hope I pronounced it right. During the meeting, we received an informative presentation from Neighborhood Affairs on the progress of the Greater Bond Neighborhood First Plan, which will also be discussed in today's agenda. Executive Director Cox shared updates on the recent Lunch and Learn event held at the Lincoln Center on March 4th, which some of you had attended. Additionally, he informed us that CRA staff have officially moved to the first floor of the Renaissance Center. Since our last update, I had the opportunity to visit a few ongoing construction projects, including Orion Motorsports, Soma Walls, Orange Avenue Apartments, and Magnolia Oaks, which have plans to open in June. Each project manager extended their warm invitation to the CRA board and the CAC to visit their respective sites for an exclusive tour. Thank you. And that concludes his report. So we'll let the record reflect that I did read it into record, and whatever the email situation is that I'm trying to get it over there, we'll get it there so that it can be a part of our backup.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
I guess I better state for the record as well that he did also send me that text message, and I have sent it to my city text, and so it will be a part of the record
Okay.
on my city phone as well.
Did anyone else receive a text message from, okay, so he sent it to the board members, okay.
Okay.
All right, so let the record reflect. Thank you. Any other further discussion on the CAC presentation? All right. We'll move on, Mr. Cox.
Item 3.02, presentation from Leanne with Neighborhood Affairs on the update on implementation of the Greater Bond Neighborhood First Plan. I believe Ashley Edwards and John Baker are present virtual. If there's any questions from the board members.
Thank you.
Good
Welcome.
morning.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, CRA Board and CRA staff and everyone else in your respective positions. I am Leanne Watts-Williams. I serve as the supervisor in the Neighborhood Affairs Division, and it is my pleasure to come before you this morning to provide you with an update on the status of the Greater Bond Neighborhood First implementation. So first, I'll start with the current projects that are currently complete or underway. I'm pleased to share that 70% of the action items from the plan have been accomplished, and 100% of the funding that you dedicated to the plan in 2018 has been allocated to various projects. First, the Greater Bond Linear Park, an investment of $650,000 by the CRA, is now complete and being utilized by the neighborhood. The linear park connects the Speed Spencer Stevens Park to the St. Mark's Trail, and it enhances bike and pedestrian connectivity in the neighborhood. It's also been used for several neighborhood events. The mayor is aware he participated in a couple of the Halloween youth events there, and you'll see more pictures on that later on. It is a welcome addition to the neighborhood. Next, we have the Greater Bond Residential Facade Improvement Grant Program. Approximately $2.1 million was dedicated to this program to improve the aged housing stock in the neighborhood. 100 homes will be funded, and they each receive $17,000 in funding to make exterior improvements to their homes. And we are about a little more than 50% of those homes are complete. Some of our vendors who we work with, Tallahassee Lenders Consortium, Graceful Solutions, and Florida developers, they ran into some supply chain issues as well as some subcontractor issues related to the pandemic, but they are back on track, and we hope to have all of those 100 homes completed by the end of the year. Next, we have enhancements at Speed Spencer Stevens Park that include new lighting, benches, trash receptacles, and also the entryway to Speed Spencer Stevens Park from the linear park and along Saxon Street was enhanced. And that represents a $30,000 investment from the plan. Next, streetscaping in the neighborhood along Saxon Street is currently underway and near completion. It included lighting, sidewalks, crosswalks, and landscaping, as well as Robert and Trudy Perkins Way received streetscaping as well. And we are waiting on the lighting to be completed so that we can enjoy those new amenities along those main thoroughfares in the neighborhood. It also included resurfacing as well. And that represents a little more than a $1.4 million investment in streetscaping in the neighborhood. Additionally, neighborhood art, $10,000 from Neighborhood First funding was dedicated to neighborhood art, and that $10,000 was used as a match for a grant through the South Arts Foundation to provide a mural on the side of the Speed's grocery store, as well as an art garden in the linear park, and also intergenerational banners will be installed along the newly erected light poles along Saxon Street later this year. That neighborhood art project is part of a larger project in partnership with our neighborhood, the Greater Bond Neighborhood Association and the Council on Culture and Arts for Greater Art for Greater Bond. And it will also include asphalt art that will be installed this weekend at the intersections of Saxon and Tucker, Saxon and Osceola, and Saxon and the Linear Park entrance. So we're really excited about that partnership with the Neighborhood Association and COCA, and those $10,000 have leveraged a total of $50,000 investment in neighborhood art in Greater Bond.
And
And
these are
those are-
local artists, I understand.
Local artists will be used to install the artwork on Saturday and Sunday of this week. The community engagement around the plan included a lunch, listen, and learn event where local leaders were able to engage with youth on the various projects that were going to be taking place in the neighborhood. A community leaders luncheon was held that included faith leaders and others from throughout the community. Greater Bond Engagement Day in the neighborhood was held as part of the Southside Farmers Market to provide a walking tour of the neighborhood to highlight some of the facade homes that have been improved, the linear park, and other amenities that have been added in the neighborhood. Additionally, community engagement dollars were used for a Greater Bond Elementary School pep rally in partnership with TPD, and we were also able to support the Greater Bond Elementary Fall Festival last year that was in celebration of them earning a B, and it also accomplished some of the neighborhood safety action items from the plan. Some of the social programs and special projects that have gone on while we've been implementing this plan include a neighborhood leadership development workshop led by Dr. Henry Lewis, who is a product of Greater Bond. We've had several neighborhood cleanups in the neighborhood to maintain beautification, and I know that Commissioner Matlow, you also participated in one of those cleanups. We've also had our Take Back Your Rights Expungement Day that was also held to address that issue in the neighborhood. We've had a home buyers workshop, and also a lemonade day with the mayor was held as well. Another project that we've been working on is an oral history project for Greater Bond that was done by Mr. Jarvis Rozier, who's also a product of the Greater Bond neighborhood, and we should be publishing that in the months to come. And also, you see in the linear park, we've also had the Halloween in the Bond Linear Park as well as one of the social programs and projects. The award-winning Southside Farmers Market has been a staple in the Bond neighborhood for the last 5 years, and that has created a sense of place in the neighborhood. And we will be celebrating our 5th year on May 11th with a huge celebration for the farmers market. So I encourage all of you to come out and join us for that effort. And there you see we had our celebrity celebrity chef making a smoothie at our farmers market as well.
Assisted by the
Commissioner.
dean. You see the dean in the back there. Overseeing,
and
supervising.
Commissioner Richardson, yes, and Williams Cox. So also during the time of the implementation of this plan, in 2020, we were approached by the Tallahassee Lenders Consortium for a project called Community Impact Measures Project in partnership with NeighborWorks America. And this project collected data to identify the neighborhood's satisfaction with community revitalization in the neighborhood. And we're pleased to share that the work was, the feedback received was very complimentary of the city and the CRA's work in Greater Bond. As you see here, 82% of residents express some level of satisfaction with the neighborhood, and 81% of households with children under 18 express some level of satisfaction as well. In regards to satisfaction with public services, police response was very good and fair, was the majority, as well as fire department response, ambulance response, and trash collection. Overall, everyone was very pleased with the services provided there by the city. So in 2022, we engaged in an evaluation of the plan to see where we were on accomplishing the action items of the plan, as well as we wanted to see what the community satisfaction was with various portions of the plan. And we also needed to identify where the remaining $2.1 million would be allocated to from the plan. And so we started that evaluation with an analysis of the completion matrix, development of a completion matrix, which looked at the action items to determine those that were complete, in progress, and ongoing. And I'm pleased to share that 70% of the plan has been implemented, and we are currently working to complete the other 30% as well. As part of that evaluation, we did a community survey report where we went out into the community and did survey outreach. The survey was launched on March 30th and ended on June 30th of last year. Delivery methods included paper, digital, face-to-face phone interviews, and we did pop-up outreach at the Greater Bond Linear Park, at food distributions with some of our partners throughout that neighborhood, as well as at the farmers market. 300 survey responses were collected, and responses were also intended to evaluate acceptance of projects and how the future funding should be used that was remaining from the Greater Bond Neighborhood First Plan. So from that survey, we found that the majority of those surveyed were homeowners in the Greater Bond neighborhood, and the majority of them had lived in the neighborhood for 9 years or more and were 30 to 49 years old. This survey response map shows where we track responses from where the surveys were coming from so that we could make sure we could focus our outreach efforts on those that we didn't, on areas that we didn't receive surveys from, so that we could make sure that we provided a thorough outreach to the neighborhood and heard from a cross-sector of the neighborhood, which we did. The main priority that came out of the survey report was the neighborhood safety and crime prevention, followed by community beautification, economic development and resident empowerment, and then land use. So the completion matrix, along with the survey outreach and the report that was developed from the survey outreach, it should be attached to the agenda item. They were used as data points to inform the Greater Bond Community Action Team leadership, as well as the broader Community Action Team, to make those funding decisions. The report that you see attached was compiled. We contracted with Dr. Adrienne Wright, who is also a product of the Greater Bond neighborhood, and she did the analysis and compiled the report of feedback and recommendations that we received. So we presented the data to the Greater Bond Community Action Team leads and at the Greater Bond Community Action Team so that residents could provide their specific feedback on what they'd like to see the remaining funding dedicated to. This was accomplished through a checkbook exercise that everyone completed who were in attendance, and this represents more extensive community engagement so that we could make sure we were doing what the community wanted and the money was going where the community wanted it to go. So from those exercises, we found that more funding was dedicated to streetscaping, and here are the totals that accomplished the entire $6.4 million. We know that the Bond Linear Park is complete. Neighborhood safety, $400,000 was dedicated there, and that is to be developed. We dedicated more funding to the residential housing facade program, which this go around will be dedicated more to rental properties that will require a match. Enhancements at Speed Spencer Stevens Park are complete. More dollars were dedicated to community engagement that we are working through developing that as well. As I mentioned, streetscaping, housing strategy is to be developed, a micro enterprise program that is currently active, and they also wanted to develop to dedicate more funding to neighborhood art. So that accomplishes the $6.4 million that you contributed and allocated to the implementation of the Greater Bond Neighborhood First Plan for your approval. So this is a high-level overview of the Greater Bond Scorecard, some of the things that were accomplished in our community beautification priority area, given the investment that you've made in the Greater Bond Neighborhood First program, as well as private investment and other sweat equity that has gone into the priority area of community beautification. We've calculated a $5,759,000 impact. Also, under land use, the neighborhood boundary zoning district was identified that will allow more mixed use of an area in the northern part of the neighborhood to accomplish some of the goals of the neighborhood. Economic development and resident empowerment with the investment that you've made there, in addition to other outreach efforts and private contributions and other development from other city departments. That represents a $9,541,000 investment. And also neighborhood safety and crime prevention with the investment there and the other efforts that are underway. That represents a $425,000 investment in the Greater Bond neighborhood. So as we continue to work and finalize the implementation of the Greater Bond Neighborhood First Plan, we will continue to work with our community partners, the Neighborhood Association, the Greater Bond Community Action Team, and those to accomplish the goals that have been set forth in the program. Thank you so much for your time, and I can entertain any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. This
My
has
pleasure.
been a very comprehensive and very thorough report out. It is awesome. We can actually see where things are happening and where things have happened. And actually, the proof is in the pudding. You drive through Bond and you see all of the work that is underway and the work that has taken place. It is a testament to what happens when a neighborhood works well together. You know, we're family. We don't always agree. And I know that we worked through some of those things. And so thank you all for being in there helping to help guide it. But thanks to the neighbors for working together for the betterment of their neighborhood. I'm just happy to see from 2018, a lot of work has taken place. Board members?
Thank you.
Board Member Richardson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. A question first, Leanne. How is the grant and loan program administered?
Are you referring to the Residential Facade Improvement Grant Program?
The micro enterprise.
Okay, that's still being developed. It
Oh,
has
okay.
not been, implemented
Implemented
yet.
yet.
It's still being developed
Okay.
in partnership with Greater Bond, Griffin Heights, and the Frenchtown neighborhoods. And we're looking to have that come online, an RFP for that out in April. Well,
okay.
next month, I'm sorry.
Okay, okay. So if you could just keep me up to date on how that's rolled out.
Certainly.
Yeah, okay.
Certainly.
But like the chairwoman, our chair indicated, this is I mean, I'm sitting here just aghast at all of the wonderful work that has been done in the Bond community. I ride through all the time. As you know, I live just south of the Bond community and have an opportunity to ride through frequently and have kept track of all of the improvements and changes. And it's just phenomenal. Leanne, you all have done a fantastic job. I'm so proud of what has happened in that community, as I know the residents are, and all of us who live on the south side of town. We see a renaissance happening with what's going on with Orange Avenue and all of the improvements in the South City area and Bond. It makes me feel good. And I want to specifically compliment you all for the leadership that you have provided. Staff has been, again, phenomenal in how you've led this and steered them around some challenging times and issues. And here we are today. And we see what happens when we invest in our neighborhoods. And so I'm looking forward to what we're doing in Frenchtown and are going to do in Griffin Heights and South City. This is just the start, but it's a wonderful start. And again, thank you all for that. I want to recognize Kathleen with COCA and the partnership that they have established with us as well. I'm looking forward to the intersection artwork, the asphalt artwork. I was involved with KCCI and some of the work that they did around the schools, and it makes a tremendous difference. And so I'm looking forward to that as well.
It's our pleasure, and it's definitely a collaborative effort. And we
Sure.
appreciate all of you for your leadership and support.
So
Great.
Board
Thank
Member
you, Madam
Richardson,
Chair.
you're going to be over there at 4 a.m. on Saturday
I
morning?
will be there at 4 a.m. Well, I actually am being a guardian on honor flight again Saturday, but I'll be there Sunday,
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
if I'm awake by then. That's going to be a long day, Madam Chair, in Washington, D.C., but I'm looking forward to it. But I plan to be there on Sunday.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other board members? Board Member Matlow?
I'll try not to repeat everything Commissioner Richardson just said, but I think, you know, from the beginning of this project, people have been telling us that they want to see tangible investments in their neighborhood that they can actually see. And I think we've definitely delivered that, and staff has done a great job, so thank you.
Thank you. Our pleasure.
All right. This is an information-only item, and boy, is it loaded
Oh,
with
I tell you.
information.
Wow.
So I would just say thank you, and thank the neighborhood leads, as well as your neighborhood affairs office and Parks and Rec, and everyone who's involved. Please share that we are just blown away with the progress that has been made, and we look forward to the completion. I was there at the meeting where the neighborhood voted on the final $2 million on how it's
Right.
going to be spent. So we look forward to seeing that done. And one of the things that I shared with them is that we know that more than $6.4 million worth of work is needed, but we can't move until we use what we have to see what else needs to be done. But you've done a tremendous job with what we have here. So thank you all, and make sure everyone knows we appreciate that. Board Member
I
Richardson?
was just going to suggest that maybe we work with our communications office to promote some of this stuff on our various
Platforms.
outlets,
Yes.
our social media outlets, our TV stations, to let the community know what's happening in the Bond community.
Will do.
Yeah.
And we
thank you.
have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the duplication, which is 4.0. So we're going to move over to items on consent. Mr. Cox, has anything been pulled from consent?
No, ma'am.
Move consent, Madam Chair.
I'll second it. It has been properly moved that we accept the items on consent. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Thank you very much. Moving on to 7, I'm sorry, I'm flipping through pages. 7.0, Frenchtown Southside District Policy Formation and Direction. Mr. Cox,
Yes.
I'm going to come to you, but I'm going to ask that some of the concerns that was mentioned in some of the public comment, at some point, could we kind of address that
Yes,
in
ma'am.
this item? Okay.
Absolutely. What we have in front of you is approval for a business facility improvement program grant for 915 Railroad Avenue. One of our staff, Elise Fisher, will give a presentation on it for your approval.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Again, this is agenda item number 7.01. This is for a business facility improvement grant application we received for the property located at 915 Railroad Avenue. The owner of the property is Blue Dog Investments, and they intend to redevelop the site to include 3 rental units and 1 retail space. The BFIP request, it will be used to renovate the street-facing retail portion of the project. The applicant is requesting a $50,000 CRA grant, $20,000 of which would be a no-match grant, and $30,000 would be a dollar-for-dollar match by the applicant. The application includes a list of eligible improvements they are proposing to make, which total $174,500. although the total cost for this redevelopment project is estimated to be over $500,000. And the eligible improvements under the BFIP program include installing new doors and windows, painting the exterior, new signage, exterior lighting, new awnings, and a new roof. And up on the screen, you can see the photos of the renderings for the redevelopment. And staff has found that the application and submittal is sufficient, and we are recommending approval, which is option 1.
Okay. Board members, any, we already took public comments on agenda items, right?
None.
Move for approval.
Second.
It's been properly moved that we accept the recommendation of staff, and all in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam,
Yes.
Madam Chair, next item we have is 8.01. I'm sorry.
Before we move, I asked that we, under this, that we talk about the public comment that was made and what we can possibly do to clear up any confusion about how this, how CRA and Neighborhood First and all of this works.
Yes, ma'am. I have been attending the most recent Frenchtown CAT meeting. Staff and I, we've been trying to appear at all of the CAT lead meetings as well. We've been trying to get on the same page with Neighborhood Affairs with what is permitted under Florida Statute 163, Part 3, and what isn't. Some of the elements of the Neighborhood First plans fall outside of what traditionally is funded by the CRA. They can be funded by the city, but the CRA has more restrictions, if you will, one of which is utilizing our dollars outside of the district. That isn't something that we typically would allow, and that is some of the funding that is being requested at the community level. So there's been, conversations as far as why that wouldn't be allowed. There's quite a bit of programming conversations regarding Frenchtown, more so than infrastructure at this particular time. So there's a lot of conversations about what kind of programs will be funded, what programs would not be funded, and also a duplication of services. Now, if the CRA already has a program that addresses something, it doesn't, to me, make sense to try to duplicate that by having a program that is specifically for Frenchtown or Bond. So, that's been part of the conversations. But again, my email is available. Our office is we take meetings. Again, if Mr. Leland isn't, able to leave a message, again, an email or another way of trying to contact them, we can get back in touch with them. But again, our staff is always available to meet with somebody and to talk to them. I've met several people at their job or business, so we try to be as accessible as possible.
So if I could ask at the end of this meeting, if you all could maybe talk and work on a time that you all can get together and get questions answered soon, prior to the
Absolutely.
next meeting, would that work?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Absolutely.
all right, thank you. All right, moving on to the next item, item 8.0, Downtown District Policy Formation and Direction.
Yes, ma'am. We have a application for a multifamily workforce housing development at 309 West Tennessee Street. Sherry Curtis will, or Sierra staff, will give a presentation, but from the CRA's perspective. But we would like Brian Pearl, the developer, to present the project to you all, and then staff will kind of explain to you where we go from there.
Okay. Mr. Pearl?
Thank you so much to the board. I really appreciate taking the time to consider this application today. My name is Brian Pearl. I'm a founder and principal of a development firm.
Now, Mr. Pearl, because people are listening and watching out there, you want to make sure we can hear you. Yeah,
Okay,
all right, in your strongest voice.
absolutely, Madam Chair. Thank you. My name is Brian Pearl. I'm the founder and principal of Global City Development, a development firm that is based in Miami, Florida. We have projects all over the state as well as in other parts of the Southeast, including Nashville and Raleigh, North Carolina. And what we try to focus on are projects that have a positive social impact. And to date, our firm, since being founded a little over 8 years ago, we've been able to fund and complete projects that over their lifetimes are going to deliver about $1 billion worth of benefits to public education and to veterans causes. One of our key focus areas as well is workforce housing, which is what brought me to Tallahassee to try to really approach it from a local point of view. We've built a local team. Ed Murray and Cynthia Henderson, really helped to give me the lay of the land. And the cornerstone of our partnership here locally is with Bethel Missionary Baptist Church and Reverend Holmes. What we're proposing in this particular project is to develop 300 workforce units that would really be, the marketing would be focused on the policemen, firemen, and medical personnel, and try to find a way to get something that is affordable within their income levels, serving income levels from 80% to 140% of area median income as defined by HUD, and capping the rents at no more than 35% of their income levels. And so, we all know that it's a difficult problem that I think everybody recognizes, that workforce housing is essential to keeping communities vibrant, and in particular, we think that this is going to serve as a catalyst to further development in this corridor. And by partnering with Bethel, really we're trying to create a development that can bring resources to Bethel for its further mission, which is more on the affordable housing side. So if you look at the way that the deal is structured, and I'll go through it, if I can figure out how to use this. What will be happening is when we begin construction, we're going to be paying Bethel $7 million for the land, which is a market price for that property. It's about 2.5 acres, and prime real estate, very close to a lot of businesses downtown, of course, and we think that that's where we're going to be getting a lot of the tenants for the project. And once the project is up and running, Bethel will be getting an annual payment until we can actually sell the project into a nonprofit structure. Depending on where the bond markets are, we'll have an obligation to do that, so that Bethel ultimately owns 100% of the project. And if you look at the way that the project economics work, this should bring at least a couple of $1 million a year to Bethel in cash flow to further their mission of affordable housing, which when we met with the individual board members, that was something that, it was an item that was brought up, how were we addressing affordable housing? This is really just a workforce project. This is 80% to 140% of AMI, but the effects of the project are going to be profound, we believe, on the affordable side as well because of our partnership with Bethel. What we're requesting, as it says here, is a loan of $7 million from the CRA. The reason for the request is that from the time that we first started discussions with Bethel, construction costs rose on the project. It's a $100 million project. That used to be around $90 million. There was a large increase in construction costs, which we can cover part of through our equity and through a construction loan. But there is a gap that that is important to be covered to be able to make the project financially viable. What I want to point out, as it says in the last line, is that before $1 from the CRA comes out, we will have invested $20 million in the project. I will have put $20 million into the project for my company. The location, for those who are, just hearing this presentation for the first time, is 309 West Tennessee Street. As you can see, it's, within walking distance of major employers in downtown area. Currently, it's being used as a vacant parking lot and a vacant piece of land that's being used as a parking lot, surface parking, which when we looked at the, the documents in studies that the CRA has commissioned, this is one of the prime parcels that's been called out to, to be developed. And so we believe and hope that you agree that this really aligns with the mission of the CRA. And because we're asking for a loan and we're not asking for a grant, we hope that, that helps ease the ability of the CRA to be able to participate in the project as requested. You can see here this is a pro forma that we put together. The grayed areas are the areas that that we believe can be served, or the rents that that we would need to charge to be able to make this viable. On the for studios, we believe we can serve the full range of 80% to 140% of AMI. 1s and 2 bedrooms, it'll be more likely to be a blend of like 110, 120% up to 140% of AMI. And as I mentioned previously, we're targeting for the marketing on this police officers, firefighters, teachers, and medical professionals, making between 80% and 140% of area median income. This is a project pro forma. You can see the $100 million of cost. Land represents about 7.5% of the cost, which is typical for these sorts of developments. Construction costs, as we all know, have really risen strongly. It seems like they're flattening out a little bit with higher interest rates, but that's been a challenge, I think, for all developments all over Florida. But by working with the CRA, we believe that we can fill that gap. Here's a net operating cash flow. If you go down to the bottom, you can see that there's a guaranteed payment for Bethel once the project is cash flowing, in addition to the land payment, starting at $150,000 a year, and then going up with the cash flow of the property. But what is important, really, even more than that, is if you look at the line right above that, is the free cash flow after debt service. That grows to by the end of this 10-year period, grows to almost $3 million. That's the cash flow that Bethel's going to get as owner once we sell the asset into the nonprofit that Bethel is going to own 100% of. The project timeline, what we would like to do, hopefully we get a positive decision on the loan that we're requesting. And we also have, been having some discussions about tax exemptions, and so we need to get that confirmed. But assuming that, because Bethel, it's not currently on the tax roll as the property, we're hoping that, that's going to be possible to keep it tax exempt. If those things are true, then we plan to go to our joint venture closing with Bethel. We already have a signed letter of intent with them. We're planning to actually, formally close the joint venture in June of this year. And at that point, we will begin the planning process. It's important to us to work with, the community and to work with the people at the city and the planning department, as well as local contractors and other local talent in terms of bringing this project to fruition. If we, are able to, get our permit on a timely basis, we think that we could start construction within about 20 months. And we should be able to stabilize the property 50 months from now, which would be in August of 2027. At that point, we would be paying back the loan that the CRA has provided. I think another thing that came up in some of the discussions is, what about the costs of the loan for the CRA? We're offering, and we've worked with the advisor, the consultant that you hired, Will Butler, to offer to be, we'll pay all of the costs of that, in terms of, any kind of review costs or charges that the CRA might have, so that it's really a costless transaction at the end of the day for the CRA. The last slide is really just some further points to consider. We're not going to be drawing any money from the CRA until we have a fully funded project and we have a general contractor with a GMP and a bond. We will be putting a covenant in place as far as the rent restrictions, so that this is something that runs with the land that nobody can change unless the city decides to do that later. So it can't be changed by a private party, not us, nor Bethel. The marketing efforts to future tenants will focus on public employees, as I said. And, the last point, which I really haven't brought up, but I think is something exciting, is, really trying to make this as environmentally friendly as possible. The project as is will we believe, help because it gets people out of cars and allows them to walk to work. But in addition to that, we'll be designing this to a LEED Silver standard and looking for ways to, to further enhance the environmental positives of the project. We're looking at several different structural alternatives that are less onerous on the environment, that are typical for projects of this kind, and something that we think can be both a beautiful project but also an environmentally sensitive one that ultimately provides economic resources for Bethel and the community to bring this project to fruition, but have it act as a catalyst for further improvements down the road. My presentation. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, I'm available.
Thank you, Mr. Pearl, and thank you for taking the time also to meet with us individually to answer our individual questions. Board members, who have any questions, Mayor?
First of all, thank you. I think this is a fascinating project. It's something that we've never done in a relationship like this. So my first question is, and I'm sorry I have to ask this on the record, but unfortunately, we've had projects that have come before the CRA that have not been brought to fruition. You do have all of your financing lined up for, assuming that the board does approve this loan as well. You have all your financing lined up and ready to go to complete the project.
Right. So we have all of the equity committed. You can't get a construction loan until you're closer to getting a permit. So 6 months before the permit, we'll be out for that. But what I can say is that we do a lot of projects at this size or larger. There is still construction financing is readily available, but we won't be drawing any of this money until we have all of that lined up and that we can prove it to you that we have it.
As I understand it, too, your company has a stellar track record. You've never defaulted on a project before, correct?
We've never defaulted on any projects, and our company, since we founded it, we've financed over $750 million worth of project costs. In my career, I've done about $2 billion. Prior to being a developer, I worked at JP Morgan in New York as an investment banker. Unless something crazy happens, we're going to be able to get it all set up. We do have the equity part of it, which is really usually the hardest part. But we think this is a great project. We think it's going to be very successful for us, the community, and for Bethel.
Again, your track record is stellar. Tell me about your construction. Of course, I think I speak for everyone that we want you to use as much local as you possibly can during the construction process. And in WSBE as well. We've got a very rich community of talented people in the construction industry. Tell us a little bit about your philosophy and how to move forward.
Yeah, I'm working with, we were actually just talking before this meeting I was talking with Ed. We're setting up 2 interviews for local contractors next week. And so, assuming that we get a positive vote, I'll be having those meetings. And then, I think when you're doing construction, first of all, real estate's obviously very local, but so you have to have a strong local partnership. But, construction in particular, because of the, really when you look at what's happening with construction costs here and around the country and around Florida, the problem isn't the general contractor, it's more the subs, right?
Correct, yes, sir.
Getting the sub market deep enough, that's an issue with, with markets, with many markets, including Miami. We're building in Fort Myers right now. We had a lot of issues. We had to bring, some subs from other places, but really the key is to have the general contractor that's local, that has long-term relationships with the subs and is going to get as good a deal as possible that's fair for everybody, and control the process. So, I wouldn't be doing this project without having a local general contractor that had bonding capacity and had, done projects like this before.
Excellent. Mr. Norvell, from a legal perspective, what is the CRA's risk? What is your recommendation? How do you see this through the lens of the attorney for us?
So, Mr. Mayor, this project is certainly within the scope of the mission of the CRA. It's within the scope of the redevelopment plan. This is a policy question for the board. It's an allocation of CRA resources. The structure of this proposed deal has been vetted by your CRA staff as well as the CRA consultant. It does contain a number of assurances for the construction of the project as well as repayment of the CRA funds. I understand Treasurer Clerk is looking at the credit market and understand that we expect that CRA will be able to borrow the funds. So it certainly can be done, but just ultimately it is a policy question for the board.
Being in the secondary position, what kind of risk do we have associated with that?
Well, so as I understand it, there's an equity cushion here. There will be a lender that's in first position, but CRA would be in a second position for a mortgage if there was a default, and you would be secured by that mortgage.
Excellent. I'm going to support the project. I think this is a great project. I think it is a creative partnership with Bethel Baptist. It is a parcel of land that for decades we have wondered how this was going to be developed, and I can't think of a more appropriate way than workforce housing as well. I want you to know how much I appreciate you willing to spend your money first before drawing down at the CRA. I want you to know that this is a new territory that we've never gone into, where we are going to loan the money, and you have accepted all financial responsibility to pay us back, including all the fees associated. That to me is goodwill. I also appreciate the fact that you're going to use local construction. You're going to help us put our friends and neighbors to work here, and I just think it's a great project. I really do. So I look forward to supporting it today.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
We'll just go down.
Oh, okay. All right. Just a couple of quick questions. We talked at one point about a partnership with the Frenchtown Heritage Hub. Did you all ever have an opportunity to speak with them? And if so, can you tell us about the status of that potential
I think
partner?
really that Bethel's leading that, so they would have to,
Oh, okay.
they would have to talk more about that. But I'm happy, of course, to participate. But Bethel's really taking the lead on those sorts of topics.
Okay. Yeah, when your picture here came up, that certainly brought that to mind as we were having discussion. Okay. The other issue that has come up is in the event that you're not able to attract the workforce that you're talking about to occupy these units, and a student comes and says, this is right down the street from my classes at the theater school.
Right.
I'd like to live here.
Right.
What assurances are in place that this actually will be dedicated to workforce housing under those circumstances?
Right. Of course, we have to work within federal, state law, right? But what we can do is make a commitment to market first, to spend a lot of time and money. We have a lot of money dedicated in the marketing budget that's within this presentation. Really is outreach to the unions and to make sure that everybody's aware of the opportunity, and that will be an ongoing obligation that we will have. The other thing is that we've managed both kinds of projects. For FIU, we built a 20-story tower, and that's 100% student housing. And then, this project that was on the front page was for a veterans-related project where we built a facility for an American Legion post in Miami, and that's just a purely multifamily project. You can dissuade students by not managing it as a student property. We're not leasing it by the bed, right? We're not going to have the kinds of events that we would have for the students, the kinds of promotional activity that you would typically have for with students. And I can tell you that I've been invited many times to do student housing here in Tallahassee, and I just felt like there was enough of that product, and I think it's nice that the university has such a big influence on the economic vitality of the of the city, but you have to have different kinds of product, right? You can't just have all the same kind of product. And so I wasn't interested, in coming to do student product. I'm interested for the workforce aspect of it. And so, we are going to commit ourselves, both in documentation form, but also, in terms of instructions to the property manager that, that we're going to make every effort that we can to have this be, fully workforce, over time. I don't know how long it'll take to be 100% workforce, but that's going to be our goal. And it's going to, I think once people see the benefits of living, near work, and, it's something that just, frees you up. And especially, if it's something that you can afford because it's not too high of a percentage of your income, it's something that I think that, people will be drawn to. So we'll have a continuing obligation. And then maybe I misunderstood your question. If you were talking about this picture, this is about the co-op? Is that what you were?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
yes.
Yeah, I am going to take the lead on that
okay.
conversation, sorry. Yeah, we want to do a 10,000 square foot cooperative grocery store.
Yeah.
We've been engaging with, I have some friends in Miami that do that kind of business, and they've already reached out to, I guess there's a co-op here locally that they're talking to about coordinating, because you don't want to step on the toes of another co-op, because everybody's working for, for the cooperative good of the community. But I think, they believe that there is a real opportunity here to put, something that could be an asset for the community. And I know that Bethel has been supportive in the past of bringing grocery options to, to this area. And it's something that, I think that, it's a small enough part of the project that it's something that we can carry and make it something special.
Okay. Yeah, that's what we had discussed.
Yeah. Sorry.
When we talked last. Okay. Madam Chair, I, like the mayor, and I'm sure everybody here on the board, this is exciting.
Yeah.
And it's new territory ventured, but I feel confident. I've had discussions with our treasurer clerk. I've had discussions with the attorney and our executive director, and they have all made me feel very comfortable, in addition to the conversations we've had, with the direction that we're headed and what this will provide for our community and the partnership. I want to thank Mr. Clay, Gerald Clay, who is with Bethel Baptist. We're going to be losing Gerald, unfortunately, but Gerald, thank you for the work that you have done during the time that you have been here to help continue to move this project forward. Terrence, thank you, and Ed and Cynthia for the work that you've done. It couldn't have happened without that kind of local expertise, I'm sure, as you mentioned. And so we're looking forward to it. I like the rendering, and so we'll see what we come up with, but I'm excited about where we're going and what this is going to provide for our community.
Thank you very much.
So thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Board Member Matlow?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I really just have one question. Do we have a staff presentation after he's done, or are we on the details of the loan?
Yes.
Okay. My only question for you, and because I saw your presentation, just making sure we're all on the same page, the repayment comes at stabilization or 4 years? Is that what's been agreed upon?
I'm sorry?
Is it at stabilization or 4 years, whichever comes first for repayment, or just stabilization?
Yeah. I mean, we can, I think we can do it from the time that we have the permit. We can set the, time frame then, but it would be, we would set a time definite like any loan, right?
Okay.
And 4 years, like if you look at the, let me see if I can go backwards. I don't know if I can work this. So if you're looking, assuming that, stabilization is 4 years from today, right? That assumes that everything is, going forward, but we won't be actually taking the loan out, right? Until we're much closer to construction, and so I guess staff can talk about that. But I would assume that it will be a little bit less than 4 years. That when we do the final paperwork, because we'll be targeting whatever our pro forma stabilization is, and then it'll be the earlier of. You're correct.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Board Member Porter?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we will have a staff presentation, is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
I first just want to say that I am, in fact, excited about this project. I enjoyed our meeting. I worked at the property just across the street for many years as a legal assistant. I parked in that lot. I think we definitely want to see people living downtown. I mean, that's been discussed for a really long time. My questions have mostly been addressed by my peers. I have what would happen if you don't get this $7 million? Because my, thought is it's not that much money in the grand scheme of a project.
Right.
But it's a lot of money for a local government, and it's a lot of money for other projects who come to us.
Right.
And I understand it's a loan, but it's still money we're committing and risk we're taking. And so, usually when projects like this come to us, I'm wondering, well, would this go on with or without our support or not?
Sure. Absolutely. So the reason why it's very impactful, that's a word I don't know, my grandmother was an English teacher, so I'm sorry if it's not a word. But the reason why it's important is you really got to look at it as a ratio to the equity. So we're putting in at least 20 million, probably put in a little more than that, right? I'm imagining, once we negotiate with the lender, say it's 25 million. So 7 million as a percentage, on top of the 25, if we had to put that extra 7, that would drive our return on equity down below 20%, and we couldn't fund the project, right? Because, then, the investors that we have, that's we're trying to get at least a 20% return on the levered equity, right? Which is a market return. So, because things always go wrong, and you always make less than what's in the pro forma, right? So, I think that, that if we didn't have this money, we wouldn't be able to hit the return metrics that we would need to make this a viable project, so it wouldn't move forward.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pearl. And I think that these are the kinds of innovative things that we need to look more at doing in our community. So thank you for bringing this to our attention, bringing it to our community. And for me, I see the people you're working with, who I've worked with in the past in the community, and I know what they're about. And so if this was not viable, they wouldn't even be sitting with you.
Right.
They wouldn't even be, making the rounds with you. So I can just look to who you're associating with to know that this must be good for our community, because they're the kind of people who would, they chew you up and spit you out if you weren't.
That's right. I think Cynthia especially.
Well, Cynthia is the one that I know the least. I'm talking about some of the other folk you hanging with that I know. I've seen them operate, and so
Yeah, listen, Bethel is very entrepreneurial, and I'm respectful of everything that they've done for the community already, and we're hoping to help play a part in their further enhancing what they're doing.
well, since you're gonna make me call them out, I wasn't talking about Bethel. I was talking about Terrence Henson and Ed Murray.
Terrence came down to Miami and he eyeballed my project. So he's on top of it.
Those are the ones I'm talking about.
That's right.
So, thank you again so much, and thank you to the team as well. Is that Mr. Whitehead I see back there? All right, that's okay. All right, y'all passing the torch back there. Is that what's going on? Okay, and thank you to Minister Clay as well for what you have brought to this project and in other projects in this community, and how you come into this community. And I don't know if you all know it or not, but Minister Clay is a recording artist and multi-talented, play many instruments, and he's actually going back into the music recording industry into the North Carolina area. So he's going to be leaving us for that. So congratulations. We may see him on the Grammys or something.
Yeah.
One day he may be coming back to the Word of South or something. You never know.
Madam Chair, he told me it was a proposition he couldn't refuse.
Yeah, I know. I
So we know
heard
what that means.
I heard. So at this time, we'll move to the staff presentation.
Thank you.
Ms. Curtis. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. I'll make this a brief presentation. Basically, just wanted to talk a little bit about the process that we've been going through for the loan. As you know, as Mr. Pearl stated, the project is requesting $7 million in CRA assistance. And in order for the CRA to fulfill this request, we would have to secure and borrow these funds in our downtown district. And so currently, the downtown district has an estimated $3 million of uncommitted dollars. When we talked to the Downtown Redevelopment Commission, our DRC members, we looked at the $3 million and taking out a $4 million loan and how that would look over the 10-year period. And over the 10-year period for fiscal years 26 and 27, there would be a deficit in our downtown district if we did the $3 million uncommitted and a $4 million loan. And so when we looked at the projections for a $7 million loan over the 10-year period, we were able to fund all of our programs and projects with the downtown district. And so we had adequate funding for those 10 years with the $7 million loan. And given the fact that Global City is also looking to take on the interest, match the interest that we would pay and any origination fees of that loan, that also assisted us in having adequate funding for our programs and projects over those 10 years. So the downtown district indicated that they would prefer that the CRA look at a $7 million loan as opposed to a $4 million loan using the uncommitted $3 million that we currently have for fiscal year 23. During this process, and those projections are also a part of your agenda item, we have been working with the Treasurer Clerk's office in terms of how we go about securing a loan, and we'll continue to work with them on that. Based on our discussions, any lender would require that we pledge our downtown district TIF in order to seek, secure, and pay the debt obligation for the downtown district. And so when we looked at that, we actually did the projections based on if the loan were coming out in fiscal year 24, and then if the loan was going to be repaid to us in fiscal year 28. And so we looked at a 4-year period, basically. And at the time, we looked at a 5% interest rate because that's what we were looking at the time. And as you know, the interest rate has climbed since then to 8%. And we've also ran those projections on 8% interest rate, and we are still able to fund all our projects and programs over that time frame. So it doesn't put us in a deficit for those, for any of our programs and projects that we fund typically in our downtown district. So if you are to approve this, we'll continue to work with the Treasurer Clerk's office in terms of the process of securing a loan and doing an RFP for banks to look at funding this project or funding the CRA so that we can fund this project. Upon any loan approvals, as Mr. Pearl indicated, the first draw would be released after they've invested $20 million of equity into the project. We'll also look at a more detailed construction or pre-construction schedule to see exactly when we'll push the trigger on those funds being released to the Global City at that time. That may not be fiscal year 24 based on our projections. That may be fiscal year 25. And if it's fiscal year 25, that may be a shorter repayment period for them if they're stabilized in 28. So it just depends on what that real construction schedule looks like once we get to that process, once we get to that point in the project. The CRA, like I said, the CRA loan would be paid back after the property is stabilized. We're also putting our conditions and terms. Basically, as you see in your agenda item, there's a long list of conditions and terms that we have indicated that, and Global City has agreed to in terms of how those funds would be repaid, how the funds would be released. And so those conditions they have agreed to. Right now, we are basically indicating that we would put those terms and conditions into any kind of agreement that we have with Global City. And we worked with Lou Norville, our assistant city attorney, in working through those terms and conditions. And we've also worked with our consultant, Will Butler, in seeking those conditions. And Mr. Pearl and his team has agreed to those conditions as of this point in time. So when we talked to the Downtown Redevelopment Commission, they reviewed this in February of 14th. They basically indicated that they've approved the $7 million loan with minimum conditions. Staff has included additional conditions with the $7 million loans, and those conditions, like I indicated, are in your agenda item. And so we're looking at having a memorandum of understanding with Global City based on those terms and conditions with the $7 million loan, but we're also asking you to allow staff to seek appropriate loans through the RFP process in order to fund the 300-unit workforce housing. So with that, if you have any specific questions, I'm here to answer those. I indicated those projections are part of the agenda item in attachments 1 and 2, and those projections are based on a 5% interest rate, but we've also ran the numbers on 8%, and as I've indicated, there are still adequate funding provided for our programs and projects in the downtown district. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
So to summarize for those who are listening, it's being recommended and has been approved by the DRC that the CRA seeks funding, a $7 million loan with interest right now, possibly 8%, which Global Cities has agreed to pay the servicing and all of that. So really, it's a net zero in the end to the CRA for securing this loan.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. And the DRC has provided some minimal conditions for executing this memorandum of understanding and moving forward. But the CRA, in working with the city attorney's office and perhaps under advisement of the treasurer clerk, you have added some additional conditions, and Global Cities has agreed to all conditions that have been presented.
Yes, ma'am.
And so what you're asking us to do today is to authorize staff to execute a memorandum of understanding with the developer for funding assistance in the amount of $7 million based on the terms and conditions listed on the agenda item, and to seek appropriate loans for financing the 300-unit workforce housing development.
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
Madam Chair, I will move the staff recommendation.
Second.
It's been properly moved by the mayor and seconded by Board Member Richardson that we accept staff recommendation.
Question.
Okay, we'll now move to discussion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A few points of clarification. Is that the staff recommendation, or is that an option?
That's option one, which is also staff's recommendation.
Okay, okay. In your view, because a concern here too for me is that obviously we're not going to be getting tax increment financing off of this because it's going to be owned by a nonprofit. I mean, so although of course it's sort of, we break even, we get our money back, and it's not for nothing, it's a project that I have said I support, I mean, then what are we doing here with the CRA? I mean, there is an opportunity cost here that we're missing out on for other projects. This is not just us breaking even. That has nothing to do with this project, but that is what the CRA in part certainly is for. So what are staff's views about kind of moving beyond this, what we're going to be able to do when other projects come to us?
And so you mean when other projects come to us, when another project, redevelopment project similar to this comes to us? So right now, the downtown district, will be sunsetting in 2034, basically.
Right.
In the next 10 years. And then, so the downtown district also is losing some of its tax increment from the county. So effective fiscal year 24, the county will no longer contribute to the downtown district just with certain projects, basically. So our TIF will be diminished somewhat starting in fiscal year 24 as it is based on some of the interlocal agreement conditions that we've already done. So we'll have a significant amount of TIF to run the existing programs and projects, but we always looked at having a diminishing tax increment because of the interlocal agreement. So there was always a position where we would come to where we wouldn't fund large redevelopment projects. We actually, as staff, we actually thought that Cascades Park would be our last large redevelopment project, but here we are with Global City, who is looking to, replace that vacant block of a parcel that has been vacant for a number of years now. And we wouldn't be able to do it without taking out a loan. So if another project came to us within the time frame before we paid back from Global City, we could possibly look at another loan depending on what our bond counsel says. But at the same token, we've always been in the stance that we would not be looking at large redevelopment projects, just more infrastructure projects in the downtown area, as well as our standard programs and projects that we currently have.
And Ms. Curtis, if I could ask that Board Member Porter, if it's okay. The other benefit is as we saw the bottom line from this project, those funds would be used to further the mission of Bethel in affordable housing projects that they currently have underway. So that would be funding future projects to help us realize our affordable housing goals as well. and also doing the infill that we talk about in dealing with housing in our community. So we're filling in, doing infill. We're funding future projects that are outside of any CRA that will help meet our affordable housing goals, are also a benefit to this. And so I think that's what CRA, our goal should be, to spur things to happen, not just in the district, but outside of the district as well.
And it does definitely further Bethel's goals in terms of affordable housing, so.
Sure. I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
No, I was just going to say, in terms of their goals and missions and for affordable housing, that would take place not only in the district, but outside of the district as well.
Sure, and I recognize all of those benefits. I mean, we're talking about it all the time, the density. You know, generally speaking, I have always had a different philosophy about how, if I had my druthers, the CRA would operate. I'm not even sure that I believe CRAs are the best way to address blight. But we have a CRA. I think we've done a lot of good with it. So here we are. In general, my preference would always be that the investments would be infrastructure rather than on a project-by-project basis as we have operated in the past. And I have had conversations and have a meeting scheduled with Bethel to talk about those affordable housing and low-income housing programs that they have. I mean, and I believe that they will, and I know that they have. At the same time, they are not our local government. We do not oversee them. They are their own entity. We're responsible for what the public, what is within our domain. And so I look forward to that, but, and that is certainly an additional benefit, but they are not an arm of local government that is doing that. We don't have control over what they do. They're obviously going to get a great deal, and they're going to do great things with that. But those comments are not directed at you. These are just, what we're dealing with here as I see it. But for the project itself, I don't see any downsides. I am a little bit concerned about, it's not even so much of a concern, just as this is not usually the kind of way that I would like to see this money being spent. But it's not a concern about the project itself. Frankly, if it were up to me, I would rather the city invest more in this project so that the units were actually more affordable and low-income units, because I could not afford to live in these units, even at workforce housing levels. And obviously, they've run their numbers, and I hope they're successful, and I believe that they will be. But I am not personally that confident that there's going to be that many police officers and firefighters who want to live in a 400-square-foot studio apartment. I don't think that's where our community is at. But that is what density looks like. That is what workforce housing looks like. And that ultimately is not my call to make. So I just say that to be clear that for me, it is about our priorities. It is about limited resources. I'm not sure this is how I would put all my eggs in, if I would put all my eggs in this basket. Thank you.
Any other comments? Commissioner, Board Member Matlow.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one question. Do you have a projection of the annual debt service?
Yes.
I'm not sure if I saw it.
Okay, it's, so for the 5%, it's on attachments 1 and 2.
Okay.
Look, attachment 2 is the $7 million loan, and it has a projection of the annual debt service on that schedule. And I think we may have, if we can pull it up on the screen, there may be projections at 8% as well. And you may need to scroll, yes, to Global City Debt Service line item, and starting in fiscal year 20, can you scroll back up for me? Yeah. Starting in fiscal year 26, the debt service at $1.3 million, and that's at the 8%.
Okay.
And that's over a period of, we did it over a period of 7 years for the CRA to pay that loan.
And starting that debt service repayment in 26, wouldn't impact any of the currently approved projects that we're working on.
That's correct, yes, sir. And you'll notice for our downtown, our ground floor retail, I have it highlighted there, as well as the small project capital funding. So those two projects, if we had to make adjustments, those would be the only two we would have to make adjustments to, but we don't have to make adjustments.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted clarity on the financial obligation, especially when we're talking about the repayment deadline and making sure everything, we're working on downtown infrastructure and those sorts of things continue to move forward and don't get delayed. I think overall, from a redevelopment perspective, this is what we're looking for downtown, taking, vacant lots or blighted lots and making them something of community value, walkable to all of our downtown businesses and jobs and so forth. So I think, that checks that box right out of the gate. I think the concern would be from a CRA perspective of the impact on tax dollars, particularly because it goes to a nonprofit that doesn't put back in. And, whether it's generating CRA revenue or not, there's a lot of costs that come to the city to provide urban services to any new residents or development, whether that's transportation, police, fire, there is a cost. So I think those are the two trade-offs. So I think I'm glad that this was a loan project because I couldn't imagine putting CRA dollars into a project that wouldn't bring that value back to the taxpayer. So as it stands, this project, as long as all the conditions are met, doesn't actually cost the taxpayers from the CRA in the end any money. We serve as that loan. So the real risk, or the only risk left to the taxpayers, is whether this development comes to fruition. And I think, Mr. Pearl has shown that he does have a track record and the financial resources to bring it forward. But we do take, that risk, as it was mentioned earlier. We've seen projects that got approved that didn't come to fruition that kind of left us holding the bag. So I think the developer has shown that he has the capability to do this, and it likely would come to fruition as long as the financing gets in place before any CRA funds are expelled. So, as long as we're all on the same page that we're going to try to get this repaid within 4 years, all of the interest will be covered by the developer. The CRA doesn't come out of pocket in the end, and it becomes a nice downtown development. I'm in support. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, or Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Yep.
And thank you, CRA staff, for being good guardians and checking all the boxes, dotting the i's and crossing the t's before you brought this to us. And thank you for answering all of our questions so that we can all be on the same page. Board Member Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was going to just add, in terms of revenue, we own the public utility that will be providing utilities to this 300-unit development. That's substantial revenue that will be coming in on an annual basis from that, in addition to the services, the water, garbage, pickup, sewage, all of those fees will still be paid, even though it's a nonprofit. That's substantial revenue for the city of Tallahassee from what we've got now, a vacant lot that's being used for parking. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Don't forget the per meeting costs, too. Just add that in there as well. Thank you. Okay, it's been properly moved in second. No, did we? Yeah, it's been properly moved in second that we accept staff recommendation for option number 1. All in favor of the motion on the table, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, it passes unanimously. Congratulations and thank you. We look forward to working with you. Moving on to item number 9.0, both districts, policy formation and direction. Mr. Cox?
Yes, Madam Chair, there are 2 items. The first item is the fiscal year 2024 downtown and GFS small and large event grant funding. Elise Fisher will give a presentation for you all.
Thank you. Good morning again. This is the agenda item 9.01 for fiscal year 2024 Greater Frenchtown South Side and Downtown District Promotional Special Event, which is the small events, and large event grant cycle funding. The CRA staff is proposing that the CRA board approve $135,000 for the Greater Frenchtown Southside District event funding, allocating $35,000 for small event and $100,000 for large event grants. Equally, we are proposing the same for the downtown district, which again is that $35,000 for small events and $100,000 for large event grant funding. With this, there have been no policy changes to the event funding program, but with the agenda packet, you may have noticed a change in the format to the event guidelines. This was completed with the intent to simplify the document and remove inconsistencies and redundant information. Everything else remains the same, including that the intent is for the grant cycle to be about 2 months long, with the cycle ending at 4 p.m. on June 30th, 2023. Only electronic applications will be received, which will be sent to cra@talgov.com. And as in previous years, the eligible applicants are not-for-profits, and we will hold a workshop for potential applicants to help answer any questions about the application and event cycle. Again, as done previously, the applications will be reviewed for recommendation from 3 members of the applicable advisory committee from each district, and the executive director may approve awards of less than $25,000. This agenda item has been reviewed by Resource Management, and the packet includes 4 different options regarding this item, and staff is recommending the CRA board select or recommend options 1 and 3, with option 1 being approving $135,000 for fiscal year 2024 GFS event programs, with $35,000 for promotional and special event grants and $100,000 for the large event grant program. And then option 3 being the same for the downtown district. That's $135,000 for downtown event programs, with $35,000 being allocated to small events and $100,000 for large.
Okay, thank you. Board members?
Move
Any discussion?
options 1 and, oh, do we have any?
We did all the public comments up front. We do CRA a little different than we do.
Move options 1 and 3, recommended by staff, Madam Chair.
Okay, it's been properly moved by Board Member Richardson and seconded by the mayor. Any further discussion by board members? Hearing none, all in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to 9.02, funding recommendation for tourist development tax, arts and cultural grants. Mr. Cox.
Yes, Madam Chair, we have taken this to the county. They have asked us to, meaning the CRA board, to look at if there's a way to give some funding for programming to Indaba for their application with the TDT. What we have in front of you is 3 options. The first option is to provide, keep the assistance for infrastructure as is, and the overage, which was, I believe, 49,000 and some change. I think at this point, because of interest, it might be over 50,000, but give that overage to the Indaba group for their programming. Option 2 would be what we received a letter from the group. They're asking for 25% of the funding that would be allocated to be for programming, and then the other 75% for infrastructure to the Adderley Amphitheater. They are willing to forego the video screen and the video production equipment as trying to make up for to accommodate the funding. And then we have board direction. So we have 3 options for you all. Staff is recommending option 1 to keep the infrastructure as is. The evaluators, that is what they recommended, was for the funding to be for infrastructure. The additional 50,000, give or take, that would be what we would recommend giving to Indaba.
Okay. Board members?
Madam Chair.
Board Member Matlow?
Thank you, Madam Chair. the item that keeps coming back again and again and again. You know, I read the county's recommendation. I do agree. I mean, I think the process has always been, it goes through the application process, and then it comes to the different boards for further input and approval. So they made a suggestion that the Indaba programming should be funded as part of this application. I look at the letter from the original applicants and the letter from the county administrator, and I think option 2, the 25% funding, was agreeable to all parties and probably would be the best course of action. Realizing that leaves the video screens off, but I think when we look at what really, you know, the Adderley is just a space, right? When we look at arts, it's really the artists and the programming that really makes the venue. So if we're looking at a trade-off between a video screen versus things actually happening and people being downtown, I think we should defer to the people coming downtown. So I would make a motion for option 2.
Second.
Okay. It's been properly moved and second for option number 2. Any further discussion? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, unanimously, option number 2. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any public comments on non-agenda items?
We do, Madam Chair. At this time, we have 2 speakers on 9 agenda items. We have Mr. Kayla Norris Barber, followed behind Mr. Whitfield Leland. Okay. All right, thank you. So at this time, just Mr. Barber. Name and address for the record, 3 minutes, sir.
Kayla Norris Barber, 527 West Brevard Street. I would like to go back to
That was all part of it.
the Neighborhood First Plan, specifically the Microenterprise Development Program. You had a presentation earlier that said this program was active, but really is still being developed. I have 3 issues. The CRA director has indicated that dollars for the Microenterprise Development Program can't be used for mobile businesses. Now, in the past, when we had funding through COVID funding, CRA approved funding for mobile-type businesses as long as those businesses were located in Frenchtown, or the people who ran the business were residents of Frenchtown. I think that interpretation of the statutes is very narrow. In addition to that, it's regressive because precedent has already been set. Additionally, it's discriminatory because let's face it, if you start talking about food trucks, especially lawn services, the majority of your lawn services are owned by Blacks and Hispanics. So we're basically just alienating or not funding programs or businesses that are owned by a race of people. So I'd really like for you guys to, I don't know whether this item will come back to you before it goes out to an RFP, so that's why I'm here today, so that to ask you to please consider funding mobile businesses, specifically food trucks and lawn services. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barber. Mr. Cox?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you please address that? Because even if the business is mobile, there is a location where they receive their mail, where checks are sent or whatever. So could you speak to that?
Yes, ma'am. So essentially, the concern that I had was giving a loan or a grant to a mobile business that could utilize these funds outside the district. Right. The intention behind the CRA is to improve, slum and blight, to improve the boundary within the boundaries of the CRA. Mm-hmm. A mobile business, there's no ability to restrict their ability to be mobile, mm-hmm. so they could easily leave the district with our funding. So what I have indicated to the working group, Neighborhood Affairs, is that no mobile businesses shouldn't be allowed to receive these grants or these loans under this program. Now, Griffin Heights is is outside of the district. They're using city dollars. If the city doesn't have a problem, then they will be eligible. But Bond and Frenchtown, because those dollars are solely CRA, I've indicated that they shouldn't be allowed to be used for mobile businesses. Again, I understand that there are potentially mobile businesses that could utilize this money. I understand that, but again, I just think it's where we have to draw the line, and that's kind of where I've drawn it.
Okay. Board members, any further discussion on that? All right. Thank you, Mr. Cox. Now, I know that Mr. Barber mentioned that what happened during COVID, but we were just trying to keep people going during COVID, So I don't know if we were hard and fast, and that was pre-year.
Yes, ma'am.
That was before you. So that was decisions that were made during that time. So the other issue that he brought up was about the micro enterprise. Explain to us exactly what's happening there.
So Neighborhood Affairs has gathered together individuals from the community, from Griffin Heights, Bond, and Frenchtown. So they're trying to develop one program to address all three neighborhoods. Some money is, from the city, and some money is from the CRA. So they're trying to blend the two. There's been a series of meetings since, I think, starting in December. Every 2 weeks they meet, try to discuss drafting this program. The program should be, the structure should be finalized. It has not been submitted to the community for review and that kind of thing. The next steps from Neighborhood Affairs is to present, to create an RFP where there would be an administrator who would actually be in charge of processing the loan applications. The grant component would be handled by the CRA staff and Neighborhood Affairs staff. That's kind of where we are right now in the process. I have asked that Neighborhood Affairs provide a copy of the program to legal to make sure that we're on the up and up and there's no issues or anything discriminatory. I've also asked that someone with a financial background take a look at it. Members of the community or this working group, they didn't feel that it needed to be viewed by someone with a financial background because some of the elements in the program may not make as much financial sense as a lending institution might have, but it's more in line with what the community has indicated they need. And again, this staff has kind of pushed back on that, but that is kind of in line with where they're taking it. But again, we're going to make sure that legally the program makes sense. But that's kind of where we are now. But it has not been implemented at all.
Okay, legally, that's great, but I would, he's not in the room anymore, but I would also have a conversation with the treasurer clerk, because treasurer clerk, these are city and CRA dollars.
Yes, ma'am.
That we're entrusting that office will be a part of administering. So we want to make sure that there's no concerns there as well. And my concern is that we're dealing with two CRA districts. We're dealing with two entities within a CRA district and one that is not. So will there be some problem there with the commingling or blending?
As of right now, no. As far as they would be identifying which community they are applying from, and they have to show proof that they are either a resident or a business owner in that neighborhood. So that is part of the requirement. So, that is one way to kind of ensure that the funds are being used by those individual neighborhoods.
So what would be the benefit of them being in one? Why not have individuals? What's the benefit of having them under one umbrella?
I would say that that is kind of the philosophy that Neighborhood Affairs kind of decided on, is that one program to address, micro enterprise for all three. So all three neighborhoods are contributing funding, but those funding can only be used for those neighborhoods. So it's 300,000 for Bond, 500,000 for Frenchtown, and I think 475,000 for Griffin Heights. So only those eligible applicants from those neighborhoods could apply for those funding.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
These are taxpayer dollars, and we are stewards of those taxpayer dollars, and we are required to be adequate stewards of those taxpayer dollars. I don't know that I know of a micro enterprise program that is administered outside of a financial institution. That's my concern. I have very serious concerns about that. I indicated that to Mr. Cox when he and I met the other day. So I don't know. I just have real serious reservations about that. We'll see what comes back to us, but at this point, I don't feel comfortable with having those kinds of funds administered outside of a financial institution. I just don't feel comfortable with it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to CRA Board information and sharing of ideas. And let me start with what we just did with the TDT funding. It's like you said, Commission Board Member Matlow, it's that gift that keeps on coming back. And so hopefully what we're doing here now, we'll get back over to the county. The reason I was trying to get an emergency board meeting was trying to get ahead of the county commission meeting so we could get it back over there then, but then they canceled the meeting. Thank you, Leon County. And so we slowed it down, and so we're here now, hoping that they've already agreed to the first two projects. This was the sticking point one, and so we're trying to get it back over there because it is my desire that we will do TDT, all of it wholesale, all at one time, be done with it, so that this part will go back to the county, and I don't remember when they're actually meeting. I think it's sometime next month. But then on the city commission side, we will deal with those two projects, and then the Indabi piece will still have to come back to the city. So, I wanted to try to keep this baby whole and just, put it over the fence all at one time, but, it's just not happening. So we're just gonna keep it moving as best we can. So I wanted to clarify that because I've heard some questions about where we were with those other two items. So I wanted to just clear that up.
So those two will come to the commission for final approval?
To the city commission is my
Okay.
understanding.
Okay.
Yes, the plan is to have it go before the county on the 9th. We have a placeholder with the city's agenda to have it on the May 10th agenda. So if everything gets approved by the county as is,
Yes.
then that'll be in front of you on the 10th.
Okay, and that will be the three projects?
Absolutely, all three.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Any further sharing of ideas or discussions?
Government's complicated.
No, doesn't have to be.
No other comments.
Nevertheless. All right. Thank you all so very much. Meeting's adjourned.